You're listening to High Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haig Minasyan.
And I'm Susanna Abrahamian.
And we're just a couple of Armenians
talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.
Welcome to the show, Tigran. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting.
So, you graduated from the Moscow Institute of Physics, starting your career in space exploration, which is so cool to me. I would love to hear more about that in a bit. But currently, you are the co-founder and current CTO of RoboMart, the creator of the world's first self-driving grocery store here in LA. And you're also the co-founder and vice president of engineering at RoboCV, the creator of these next-gen forklifts and tow tractors using collaborative AI. Did I say that right? Is that true? Correct?
The definition is close, but I'm ex-VP.
Okay,
I'm co-founder, but I'm not involved right now.
Okay, gotcha. So, Tigran, we wanted to talk to you today as someone who has a strong background in science and as someone who is well acquainted with the tech industry in Armenia, because we know you are still active in its development of Armenia's science and tech industries through projects such as the Gidush initiative. And so we wanted to discuss with you today to give us an update on the tech industry in Hayastan and how tech, IT, sciences can play a role in strengthening and contribute to a more sovereign, secure, overall successful Armenia. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting.
Hell yeah.
I guess I can start with the first question. So Tigran, Armenia has been spotlighted as the potential Silicon Valley of the Caucasus. Do you think this perception is true?
I'm sure that we have the potential. And even if you look to our history at the close, not too far, we can see that it's possible. We have done something similar.
Are you referring to the times of USSR?
Yeah. Because I can't go before that. I wouldn't say there was any good example regarding this before that. Yeah, but during the Soviet Union, we saw how out almost of nothing, we developed this scientific technological ecosystem and then
modernized,
and then we were really creating a lot of intellectual property, like products, and maybe the products were not really manufactured a lot in Armenia, but the intellectual property, a lot of it was created.
Well, didn't we have the most physics labs per capita in all the Soviet Union? I heard something like that. And we were making the microchips for computers. I don't know if you remember.
I don't know about the physics. I don't know really the numbers, but it was definitely very, very concentrated.
Per capita,
Might be.
You're a physics guy. I figured maybe you know all the physics history of Hayastan. I've been to the one in Yerevan, the physics institute there. It's you can tell that it hasn't had a lot of funding or innovation since the Soviet times. But I remember one of them giving us a fact like that. So
yeah. I didn't know that fact. It's interesting. I can check it out. But yeah, definitely I know about the different physics institutes in Armenia.
Yeah.
I think in 2018, the Armenian government reported that the tech revenue continues to rise, and it was the largest foreign investment, considered the largest foreign investment. Now we have more than 400 IT companies in Armenia, I believe, and the total revenue was about $500 million. Do you think that's a big accomplishment for a country as small as Armenia is with its population? Because for maybe Americans, $500 million might not be such a big accomplishment, but if we take into account our
GDP or whatever,
yes, and the number of population, I think it's...
Yeah, I think that's great. But I think it's important for us to look into the basics or fundamentals of why this is happening. And one of the reasons I will argue is that almost all the cases of the successful startups that we have in Armenia, tech companies, are based on that talent and ecosystem that we had that was left
the culture
after the Soviet Union, which we didn't develop. We just left it to be as it is,
stagnate or whatever.
Actually, just to go down, and then it's almost entirely gone. But also the talent, the knowledge, the people, some of them who stayed in Armenia, who didn't leave, they started getting involved in some of the private companies or creating private companies. And also what's more important, they teach the next generation or taught the next generation, but also if you look, like, these are sometimes the kids or grandchildren of the people who used to work in the science or tech industry in the Soviet time. So they transitioned all this like culture of knowledge and loving the knowledge of like doing the research, and now you can see these people that are going and working in the high-tech industry or creating companies, and we say, yeah, that's great, like we have these things, but we are actually not looking into how we got here. And because of all the I would say anti-science probably policies that we had all these like 30 years, right now we are in a point when we don't get enough talent into the ecosystem so that it can continue growing.
Do you mean like external talent, like from other countries, or do you mean like our own talent kind of staying with us, or even bringing diaspora talent back to home? Is that what's lacking?
No, I mean internal. I mean, to different reasons, like people come to Armenia, which is sometimes not dependent on us, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we are very successful in Armenia on creating an environment where people would really want to come in any scenario.
Why is that, would you say?
That's also another problem. Mm-hmm. But if you look into like how we are developing the internal talent, we really haven't. We are like everyone is talking about education, right? But there are fundamental problems there which are not being solved. Like one of the biggest problems in Armenia is like the number of teachers. Like who is going to teach? And the interest in learning in general and in STEM fields are really in a very low level. And this is in our argument in Gituj, one of the arguments was that one of the main reasons is that we always talked about education and tried to solve the problem of education in a vacuum separate from the sciences. There's a big connection. You can say always, like people like to always talk that you need a good education to have a good science, but it's also vice versa.
Yeah.
You can't have a good higher education if you don't have scientists.
A good foundation or a good scientist in your society.
Which can be the professors, right? And also, and the second level, if you go, like how can you have good teachers if you don't have good universities where there are good scientists, right? So there's a whole this interconnection between education and science that you can't just develop education separately and say, I'll deal with the science later. Well,
so I can see that. I mean, Armenia was an impoverished nation. It still is for the most part. Collapsing Soviet Union, earthquake. There's so many issues that it had. But one of the really nice things that we've seen in the last 10 years, I don't know how many years TUMO has been around, but I mean, has things like TUMO or the co-op smart centers is that solution you're talking about, like those kind of institutions, or that's not enough?
That's really great. These initiatives, TUMO, co-op, Armat, laboratories. I really like all these projects. Probably a bit more. Maybe I like co-op because it's in Lori where my roots are.
Yeah,
their first center. Yeah, no, I'm from near Odzun. So, but that's just like a personal connection.
Yeah, don't worry.
And. These are very great educational projects, and they really bring a lot of value. The question is, what is this youth who go through these programs, what they do after that when they have this real hunger for knowledge and they go to universities, or they don't go, right? Where should they go next?
And their TUMO education was even maybe better than their college education or something, or there's no work afterwards, even if they do get if they are inspired.
There is some work, I think. Not everybody needs to go to university. Actually, one of the problems in Armenia that a lot of people who probably don't need to go to university in Armenia, and that lowers the quality of higher education. But also the thing is that for, let's say, I'll talk about engineering, right? It's very easy for me to talk about engineering, but I don't want to talk on whatever issues we are talking about. It's not only about STEM. It's also the same issues we can talk about humanities and social sciences.
It's everything, yeah.
But specifically STEM, because it's I can talk about this more like
confidently or whatever.
Yeah, confidently. So you can't be really a good engineer if you don't study some of the, I don't know, basic fields, and let's say in math or even in physics. Like even the software engineer, I think, needs to know some basics of the physics. If you are going to go into hardware, even more important thing, you need to know physics, and some specific fields of physics you need to know very well.
Yeah.
And I see in Armenia, like students go in a first and second year and start working in parallel, and when and don't spend enough time on learning, and they really limit their ability to grow later.
Yeah, I can see
it's
that.
important at that like stage, really to absorb all this basic knowledge, which is going to help you to build all the knowledge after that.
To become well-rounded, and I can see that. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So there's the IT industry, which is what we hear a lot about. But is there, when we talk about tech and technology and advancing technology in the industry itself, could you differentiate what, IT is with the broader tech industry? Is there a difference between that and everything else?
Yeah, definitely there's a difference. So tech is, I would say, much broader than just IT.
Yeah.
IT is mostly about software, and I'm especially a person who likes a combination of software and hardware. I'm not a huge fan of IT only, like software only. And it's not actually, it's also important for every country, right? You can't just like develop only being based on the IT knowledge and IT sector. And it's not only about developing economy, right? It's also about what talent and infrastructure you have to solve your own problems. Like, do you have enough companies that can, or talent that you can form a task? Let's say we need something for the country, and we want to get the result, right?
Yeah.
Let's say the first number one problem is probably like defense related stuff, right? Can you implement it internally or not? Do we have the companies or talent inside to formulate the project, and someone will come and solve it? So from this perspective, it's very important to have the hardware component also developed in the country, which is based also obviously on several scientific fields.
Yeah.
And the problem right now in the tech in Armenia is that it's not really serving much, I would say, to the Armenians' needs. It's mostly like international companies,
app-based, how to draw something. There's a famous quote I read about. It was about Silicon Valley actually, and they were like, the brightest minds of our generation are going to coding for ads for like game apps and stuff. Instead of solving world hunger and cancer and this and that.
But that might be the higher pay that attracts people.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah.
No, it's not only about what issues they are solving, who for they are solving the issues.
Sure.
Like right now, and I'm not saying this is all bad, right? Whatever we have, right? Because let's look a bit back. Like we had these outsourcing companies in Armenia, which is not creating a lot of value, right? Like whoever is creating the end product, they are getting the most of the money.
Yeah.
But now we are creating some products, but still a lot of companies, most of these companies, their headquarters are not in Armenia. Their legal entities are based somewhere else. The only big benefit is that the founders or like early employees are Armenians, and that's great. They'll get a lot of stocks and stuff, right, and resources, which they can later on invest in other things, or do philanthropy or whatever. Yeah. But the thing is that we actually need companies who are really based in Armenia, so that the added value is created in Armenia. And also we need companies that can solve problems for the country.
I wanted to mention, based on what you said, we have one company that I know, Pixart. They have headquarters both in San Francisco and in Yerevan, and I think their revenue was more than $1 billion.
They're like our top company. I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah.
So, do you think for them having one of their quarters in Yerevan is benefiting Armenia in any way, or?
Yeah, that's definitely benefiting. So let me be clear. What I said before, probably I should be clearer. That's not correct. Like, I'm not talking about headquarters. I'm talking about where is the end, like, legal entity, where the shareholders are, and where they are getting the revenue. Like,
Yeah, where the
from
bank
which
accounts
legal
are, or
entity
whatever.
they are selling their products or services. So from that perspective, I'm sure their legal entity, like the head legal entity is in the US, and so that's the same issue. But it's great that they have like one of the headquarters in Armenia. That's definitely is much better than if we didn't have the
At all,
companies.
yeah. Well, so is the advantage of having a legal entity in the U.S. or wherever? I mean, is it tax? Is it just easier to do business that way? Is that what the issue is?
It's just it's a known environment for investors.
Yeah.
There are very low risks. People have invested in so many companies in this legal environment. Like in a small country in Caucasus, it's bigger risks for investors.
But isn't that like what the appeal of all this was in the end, like tech and IT, that here we have a landlocked country where, you know, we're closed off, we don't have sea access. Like, here's an industry that we can sell products and do things online or whatever, move product further because of depending on what it is. So you'd think that maybe we wouldn't have an issue like that. Maybe even if our government had like these tax incentives and this and that, or was able to work with governments and ease maybe like double taxation, etc. There'd be an incentive to have the legal entity in Armenia, but it seems like it's still easier to be abroad for most of these companies.
I don't think that we have done all the things we could have done in Armenia to make it more interesting for investors to come.
Well, isn't there? I thought there was a tax incentive though for IT companies, or there's like a tax
In Armenia or outside?
Yeah,
Armenia?
yes,
there is.
But they lowered it, right?
Right.
There's a 10% tax for, like, flat tax for startups.
Mm.
That's great, but if you compare to other tools that other countries are doing, like one of the tools is this thing called super deduction, right? For every X amount you invest in R&D, you get 4x tax deduction. Like, they do these things, and it's really beneficial, like interesting for like tech companies. Or they create special zones where English law applies, and it is much more like easier for the investors to understand. So there are a lot of tools that we haven't even tried yet.
Tigran, what opportunities did Armenia unlock for you that you decided to come to the US and start your companies here or advance your companies here?
So it's only one company for now. My first company was in Moscow, and I think the problems I will outline is more or less the same. It's not. First of all, I met my co-founders here. It's not like
There's a company there and you brought it here or something.
Yeah. That's first. Second, I'm not considering myself as like I've fully moved to the US, right? It's a working environment for me. There's the market here, and we are just really creating this new product or service which can really revolutionize how people get their goods. So I would say the number one reason is probably market. There's no obviously market in Armenia. Second, I would tell that there is also an issue with the number of talent still. This is one of the reasons. One of the reasons actually why I myself got so interested into what Kitur is doing with all these problems with the investment in R&D. It's like starts probably, I don't know, 10 years back when I was first in my first company, and I was thinking, okay, like we are in robotics. Can I get some talent in Armenia? Like, can we develop something there? and then I go and I don't find people, and then I start digging and trying to understand why. Like, what's the problem? Like, we can't have why I can't find people, and then you dig deeper and you understand that there are no laboratories in the universities or research groups where people do these things, and there are no professors.
This was 10 years ago, like something like that. Yeah,
I would say it's like started maybe about 10 years ago.
Tumo started like 3 years after that, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, it's Tumo is not relevant to this a bit. It's
not
very
high level,
great.
yeah.
It's very great on
foundations, like early
inspiring kids to learn more, like and giving them opportunity at the like school level. But I'm talking about like real like masters, PhD,
higher education.
After that, like people doing research really in a competitive scientific fields. Yeah. And here we have a really big problem, especially with some applied topics.
Since you mentioned Gituj, can you please tell us what the initiative is about and what's the purpose of Gituj?
Yeah, the purpose is very simple. The initiative is advocating for higher investment in R&D. Higher R&D spendings in Armenia, at least 1% of GDP, public expenditures, and popularizing science and R&D.
Is there a difference between diasporan investment? I mean, we talked about some of these diasporan programs and nonprofits, but what's the difference between them trying to help spark this industry and this in this education and public and like government sponsored maybe support? You said public funding, right, for R&D. Is there
that's government?
Public is government. But like, what can they do that the rest can't, or like a diasporan can't go and do that there?
So first of all, this is not only about like spending money. That's not even the probably first thing. I mean, in the end, like countries compare themselves with their R&D expenditures, but obviously that's not just a number there. Like, okay, we just spend more and we compare. Obviously, they think how they should invest strategically, like in focus where they need to focus.
Yeah, creatively.
So that's one thing that, like the country's science policy is one thing that the government only can do. Also, it's not only about just giving money for scientific research, right? You need to, if we like break down R&D, there's like basic research, applied research, and development. So basic research is like, we are just exploring, it's interesting, like curiosity-driven research. But even here you can have priority fields, which should depend on what you want to do in the other two, like applied research and development. Here, the most important thing for the government is to understand, okay, what are the country's needs? Like, in which fields I want to advance? What is my strategy in different things, let's say defense or economic development? And these are the capabilities I want to develop, and I'm going to invest my taxpayer money into these fields. And then we can understand, okay, if we want to develop this, it means we need to develop these scientific fields, focus more of the basic research funding into these fields.
I see. So it can help, like what government can do and the state can do is help put it all together. Like these private or independent kind of organizations or companies, are pieces of the puzzle, but what the government can maybe do is help coordinate it in a more efficient way for it to also be more cohesive. Well, actually, I wanted to bring up an example. Like, for example, Armenia needs a satellite. We would do so much better if we had, remote sensing and the ability to see imagery on a daily basis. It would help agriculture. It would help our water resources. It'll help security. So, I know that recently Armenia contracted with a company to have some sort of satellite capabilities, but like you were just saying, in its involvement in developing that, what would be the steps, or what would the government need to do to help get a satellite company or a satellite in Armenia to help develop Armenia?
So first of all, that's the thing. Like, we should understand like which satellites do we need a satellite or not? Probably yes, but which satellites we need? Like this is all depends on what are our needs. Like as a country, that's the job of the government, right? Like we citizens elected the government to understand what are the needs for the country, and we are paying the taxes so that they can use and their salaries so they can put together programs and implement them.
Give us direction.
This is in a nutshell, right? Obviously, it's much more complex.
Yeah.
So there is some program like how we see that the country should develop, and in every area there are challenges which you can solve through R&D spendings, like through R&D programs.
Okay.
And you need to put out these programs and saying look, I have these problems, and formulating in some way that I don't know, research institutes, universities, or private industry can come and solve them. Not every solution will be based on some research and development, but if you want innovation, you want new ways, much more efficient ways, R&D is one of the main crucial tools.
Okay.
Let me try to put it in another way, right? So the government's role here is to define what are the needs.
Yes.
And understand where they can motivate others to invest, like create environment for the tech, private investors or whoever, or maybe some other countries like foreign investment.
Right.
And understand where others won't invest, but this is necessary. So I will invest myself with the taxpayer money because this is crucial.
I see.
This is needed for the sovereignty, right? This is needed for our existence, for the well-being of the citizens.
Let's say our government is unable to figure this out. They don't know what that direction or what the pieces of the puzzle are to help R&D or help fill those gaps in. I mean, what should they do? Should they hire a consulting firm to help figure them out? Have you seen someone in this situation?
Even that is acceptable. The most important thing is, do you see the need and are you able to execute it?
Yeah.
Even if you hire someone that can do, that's basically what the government does, right? They hire ministers and all the personnel just to do this. Or you need to hire someone from external, whatever, do it. But it needs to work. It needs to happen. If you can do it, it means you're a bad government.
That's why it feels like we don't have those people in our government to be like that know well enough to do that. They don't have the experience and they don't have the connections out there. That's why it's frustrating. And
let me ask this question: do they have the ability to listen to people like you? Let's say if you go to them and you say, "I think our country needs this, this, and this." Do they have the transparency to talk to you about the things that they invest in or the things that they're doing? And do they have the ability to listen to people?
Look, we need to understand government is not one person.
Of course.
It's always different people.
And
we have seen many different types. Obviously, we talked a lot. I'm myself active in the initiative, though it's there's a big community. There's more than 170 individuals, about 20 organizations, associations, business associations, and funds that have joined the initiative. There is a group of people who are more active than other members. So we talked a lot with different people. Some of them didn't really understand. They were surprised, really, what can science give us, or what programs you have. And we were, in some cases, we knew that there are programs in the government structure, in the special unit which is responsible. In Armenia it's called science. One of the agencies actually that is responsible for R&D funding is called Science Committee. They are mostly funding basic research. We knew that they had some programs, and then we go and talk with the higher levels of the government, and they say, what programs are there? I said, look, there are programs. If you request in the ministry, they have programs. Maybe you should look at them.
Yeah, sure.
And they really we'll request. Okay, so sometimes it's about even facilitating so that the processes go ahead.
I see.
But in some cases, you see people which really don't understand what the science is, or they find million reasons why it can't be done in Armenia.
Are you talking about people that are appointed in those fields? They are people in the tech field, but they don't understand? Because I think we have had some of those people who who don't have background in a special industry, but they are in that.
You mean in the government?
Yeah.
Look, a lot of people who are not responsible for these fields, even they can talk about that, but I think it shows the general mood inside the government bodies, how they relate to science. I mean, right now I can say that there's a progress. Like, at least we don't see public announcements from people like talking really crazy things about science and scientists, like nonsense. We've seen it before. Like, for the last year, I can say that at least we don't see that.
And are those people who have background
probably
in science, or they don't,
No.
and they give themselves the credibility to talk? Okay.
Like, there were people, like, I remember giving interviews saying we should sue the scientists because they just get the money and just write some scientific papers. What is this?
They just didn't understand.
Yeah, why are we paying for this? Like, this, sometimes this is the level of some
understanding of it.
Some officials. But I would say there are also people who understand, maybe not deeply, but they still understand. And it's possible to find some like common ground with them, discuss, and it's always hard because it's easy to push something forward, if advocate for something, when you know there are people that can do that. They have the program and they can do that. But in some cases, it's even more complex. The government actually needs to create some new unit which needs to do some new thing, and this is a really complex thing. Another agency which is obviously is funding R&D is the defense R&D in Armenia, and I mean, it's obviously like very closed. And one thing that is amazing there is that you can see that last year they had some budget and they spent less than half of it. And then end of year they transferred the budget to some other things. And this is really
it's concerning.
It's concerning. It means and this is another concerning thing there is that for about 2 years the head that group didn't have the head person who's going
they have a chief or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Oh, the chief of the staff of the defense.
No, defense R&D.
Oh, the R&D thing.
In the high-tech industry ministry, there's a special unit for.
And they didn't hire someone or put someone there yet.
For 2 years, they didn't have.
Is this since the war? Essentially,
like before and after.
What are they doing?
So now there is
warfare now.
For the last 2 or 3 months, 2 months, I think, there's a person who did a new appointed person. Let's see how it goes. But again, even after that, like last year they cut the budget end of the year, which you think, okay, they were not able to spend it. Now they cut it. But this year they had slightly more budget than last year.
Yeah.
But in April they cut it a bit. Like, why? How can you do this? Like, it means like you don't understand.
You know, they're just trying to show people that we are. They'll make the PR stunt about it, and then afterwards they'll cut it when no one's looking. I don't know.
It's interesting, right? There's always news about when some funding gets increased, but there's no news when
it gets cut. That's what I'm saying. Is like, look, we do care about this and that. I mean, we've seen a number of like these small drone companies like come up in the last year or two, and it is nice to see. It's definitely not the solution or what's going to help us defend our country against those Bayraktars or whatever. But I don't know how well you know the involvement of the R&D and the government in that. But is that a product? This recent resurgence of these drone companies, is the government involved there a little bit with that, helping promote it?
I think they are showing in different videos that they are involved in some of the programs,
supporting it in some way. So that'd be like an example of like them really kind of helping.
It's really. It's amazing that and disturbing if you check the budget. It's every year it's about $10 million budget for defense R&D, and they don't spend it.
That's only $10 million.
We think it needs to be at least as much as for basic research. You spend like $50 million. You need to increase from 10 to 50. So here's another thing. Like when we
triple it.
The only when we had discussions at some point, and probably the last like after discussing and cutting through a lot of nonsense arguments with the government officials, the last one that we heard was okay, we don't have the problem. We can invest 1% of GDP. Yeah, that's not money is not a problem. The problem is our ecosystem can't spend it efficiently. and it's like really amazing that you can get such an answer, because what we were advocating for is that we need to fix in a law that we are going to spend at least 1% of GDP in 2024, starting from 2024. So it means you have time to prepare. And second, until that time, you need to invest increasingly in how you increase your capabilities to spend it efficiently. And one of the main things that the government should do in this case, in our opinion, is first of all, they need to define the needs and start these R&D programs. And second, we need to start really investing a lot of resources into how we bring scientists and engineers to Armenia.
Yeah, people that know what they're how to get it going.
And there's a lot of talent in diaspora, which they can easily do. But they are starting right now. Like a few weeks ago, they launched a new program for international researchers to go to Armenia or do remote projects.
Is FAST doing it?
No, this is government.
Oh, this is the government.
Just like I can share the links. They announced it a few weeks ago, and the second one they announced last week, I think. The problem there is the targets they are putting there, like 10, 20 people this year, which is like nothing.
It's not enough.
Because just to, if you look at the numbers of how fast we are declining in the scientific human capital, we have about 3,600 people in total, like in Armenia, doing research, and only 2,500 of them have PhDs, and 1,000 of them are older than 65 years.
Yeah, it's a Soviet generation.
So we have this huge gap in the like mid ages, I would say, and
that's an issue.
You need to bring like, I don't know, at least 200 people a year, not like 10 or 20.
So that we can catch up and like,
at least stagnate.
Yeah, at least stagnate. Not that we're in a deficit. Well, I mean, you were saying how they're gonna raise the military defense, but R&D budget in 2024. It's like 1 year before Artsakh is gone. But it's interesting. You mentioned that middle-aged group that we're missing, and that's actually how I'd always explain to people why Armenia is having such a difficult time economically or in general, because and I don't blame that generation. It wasn't their fault that the Soviet Union collapsed, war, earthquake, all those things happened. But the way I look at it is there's an entire generation of people your age and below, let's say, who didn't have parents for the most part that could give them the advice they needed to survive in a capitalistic free market world and this and that. You know, they had a different education system. They had a different...
Are you talking about not having the Soviet Union influence?
It's just that like you went from the Soviet Union's economy, culture, and whatever system to a completely different one, and so they were basically there's an entire generation of of Armenians out there that are unable to support the younger generation and doing things. If anything, science is one of the only things left that there is an older generation that can help because that stuff translates, But in terms of scaling business,
mostly in the STEM fields,
yes,
unfortunately, because obviously humanities and social scientists in Soviet Union were not science, I would say.
Yeah, it's different.
Because it was all under propaganda.
Right.
It was serving the state propaganda, so there was not really a competitive scientific community in these fields. And we see actually that even today, like 96% of our scientific peer-reviewed publications are in STEM fields.
What you said was very true, and in that maybe, where are those Armenian parents that can give you the advice and the support you need and the money for this and that? It's the diasporan parents. The diasporan Armenian parents could fill that gap. Even if it's not them, they can spend the money in bringing non-Armenians to Armenia to help fill those gaps as well. I mean, freaking Azerbaijan with all their cash, that's what they're doing. They're bringing in the specialists from every country in the world to come modernize them and improve their logistics. And I mean, they have cash to spend. That's what cash can get you.
But I also think that there might be a knowledge gap between like scientists of the Soviet Union times and then scientists now, because science is always evolving. Even like the equipment, the technology that we're using. For example, I was working at a laboratory doing PCR for COVID testing, and nothing was manual. when I was working for at UC Irvine doing research, we were doing everything manually. But for like big sample size, when we're testing like thousands of people's, we're not doing anything manual. We have the machines in there doing everything. But those machines have been developed like 5 years ago.
Right.
So they weren't around. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think the Armenian military, like a lot of their offices are all done through paper still. It's not, there's no computers there.
Yeah, probably. I don't know about the military, but there is definitely an issue with the equipment infrastructure, which requires a lot of investment, and the government is not. It's like they are, yeah, we'll do next year, or let's maybe get some grant from somewhere, and like out of 25 billion Armenian drams that was in a budget for this year for science, 2.5 was supposed to come through some European grant. There's no sound about that.
Do you know where all that money went? Democracy and anti-corruption, but
yeah, I don't know where, but it didn't. I didn't hear anything about it. It was supposed to go for equipment.
Yeah,
was it going to the tech ministry?
No, this is in the Ministry of Education, Science, and Culture and Sport.
And there is no transparency about what happened with the grant.
No, it's not like it came and it disappeared.
Oh, it didn't.
There's nothing about.
Wow.
Is it coming? Like, have you applied for it? Like, did you have it before? Like, or why did you write in a state budget?
Someone must have said it over the phone and like, okay, we'll write it. No, well, I think what I was thinking about the older generation of scientists is like they might know the knowledge or understand the theory behind a lot of the things that maybe Tigran's working on, but scaling it and turning it into something that can make cash internationally and like able to market their business. I think that's what maybe they're not able to do. And
or
that's
being
what,
open.
Being open.
To like retraining, let's say if we have new technology, you have to do retraining, new protocols.
Tigran, what would you say is what's a challenge for that older generation of Armenian scientists in helping rebuild, the lack of science and science experts in Armenia right now?
No, there are. I think these people which still
are active.
Still active.
Yeah.
And when I say scientist, I put the meaning in that. It's just not someone who claims he's a scientist. He needs to prove it through publications, right?
Yeah.
Even not PhD, which they got in Armenia, which in some cases is not really a PhD.
But
it's by international peer-reviewed publications. So that's unfortunately the only way right now to judge if someone is really able, not able, but actually giving a scientific result or not. So their problem, I know, I talked to a lot of people, they can't get enough talent to train them. Or even if they get some people, they train them and then they defend and they leave. They don't stay. And the problem is that these people at some moment go to pension or die.
Yeah.
And the whole scientific school is just like gone. Because there is no next generation to continue the work they were doing. And for the last 10 years, we saw this happening over and over again. Like many fields which were really competitive in Armenia just disappeared because the main person died and there's no one to continue his work or her work.
And so Gitush is trying to fill this gap with your guys' organization. Is that what kind of the issues
we are actually we are so if you just like look at one thing, right? About 1 year ago, we started as a public campaign. I mean, the discussions and like more private discussions were happening before, but as a public campaign and then as Gitur, because that word appeared at that moment, we started last February. And before that, if you look into the media, there is not really a lot of talk about science, about R&D in general.
Yeah.
Now, if you check after that, like almost every day there is something in the media, and this is important. I mean, so and this is also to the credit of the media in Armenia, which, despite all the like sometimes political differences, and some of them obviously are more independent than the others, they almost all cover the topic of science and they go to young scientists, they talk about their work, they get an interview from them, and this is really great. I mean, these days you can see like it's getting popularized,
trendy, whatever.
But overall, yeah, that's one of our goals, like creating a public demand, so that the public understands that is important, and it will eventually translate into the actions of the government because they need to do it.
I see. So working with journalists, working with media outlets, working with them to try to gain awareness for it.
We even did one program with it was Gitur, ISTC, and Yerevan State University. Last year we did this bootcamp, Science and Technology Journalism Bootcamp, and we had 11 graduates from there, and all of them I think went and they are working either in media or in companies in their PR departments, and they are working on communicating what science and tech is. This year we are doing the same. Like I think maybe we are even targeting to have more people there, more participants, and eventually we would want this to become a maybe master's program in the university.
That's genius, Tigran. I see what you're getting at, is like we have to create this culture of understanding the importance of science and technology, and we have our limited resources, so we're going to work on those media students to inform them and teach them about the importance of all this, so that when they go out there they educate the public, and it can have that ripple effect. Very good.
Because I mean we saw, if you discuss with people almost in the government, in the media, there is like this perception that science in Armenia is gone. Like it's like some old people who don't do nothing. Like we should close the Academy of Sciences, and like why do we need even like science? Like why people need to write papers? Like all understanding of these basic things. I mean, there are problems with the system in Armenia. I'm not talking about that. But saying that there's a difference saying we should close the Academy of Sciences with we should reform the Academy of
rather
Sciences,
than try to fix it.
Because we need it. It's essential for us. We can just close and say, like, we don't need it.
That's why I'm laughing. It's
so I can say that with a lot of these questions, I can see a progress. Like people are like thinking differently, and most importantly, influencer people, and also in media, there's a change in understanding, because it's important. You can say that journalism is like independent, but no, they always, by the way they are asking questions, it's always has impact on what message you are giving to the listener.
Yeah.
What about influencing the younger generation? Because I remember when I was back in Armenia, I went to school in Armenia 1st to 8th grade, and I don't remember that there was a big emphasis on science, unfortunately.
There wasn't, or there was?
There was not, unfortunately. I had a basic against Sabanutun, which is like biology, but it wasn't anything too big.
They taught you chess.
Basically, and I went to school in Yerevan in North. So I'm wondering, can we maybe start with the school generation, the young generation, maybe implement some programs with the schools so they can tell the kids how important science and technology is, because I think it should start from the young ages.
Yeah, definitely we should start from we should work there. I don't agree that we should start there. We should do in parallel.
Yeah,
because all these programs that we discussed, TUMO, like COAF, ARMAT, and other programs, it's great. They are starting there, right? You can say that they are working there, and it's great. I'm not saying that they were there for 30 years. Obviously, they started probably during the last 10 years.
Is it accessible to everyone?
So, TUMO and COAF, they are localized in some places, but ARMAT is in half of the schools of Armenia. ARMAT laboratories, which is like STEM labs, they are in I think half of the schools in Armenia. So that's already a scale, and they are going forward and now adding some additional programs in some of the labs. So that's really that's a big scale.
Yeah.
But the question is, okay, we're interested. We really did this. Now they are interested. What's next? Like this generation that grows, like what's going to happen? I mean, obviously you can send some of them to study abroad, but then you have lesser chance of them coming back.
Maybe they won't come back, yeah.
And in the beginning, and you can influence their decision of coming back by creating opportunities in Armenia.
Yeah.
If they don't see there is if the government, the society does not give importance to the science, They would say, okay, I love doing science, I'll stay there.
So in addition to a lot of the things we've talked about in terms of the challenges that we have, do the lack of like actual physical natural resources play a part in like it kind of slowing down new companies and new initiatives in Armenia in terms of science?
I don't think so. No, I don't think that's there are a lot of countries you see they have resources. Like it does not mean that resources definitely means that you are going to be developed and prosperous. It's even the resources we have,
we have metals.
We have some resources, obviously. But I think in these times, in 21st century and even in 20th century, at least second half, it's more and more importantly of the brain power.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do with that? I think it's also important maybe to discuss what the diaspora can do in this sense, because it's not like might be the impression that I'm saying until the government does its job, nobody can do anything. Obviously, we need to demand from the government to do their job. That's no question there. But while doing that, we need to also do our best to advance these issues, to get to the solution. And here, there are many different ways. Like if there are like scientists in diaspora, I would really ask them to look into the opportunities there are in Armenia. And there's state programs, the ones I mentioned, and there's they started giving some really much better and bigger grants last year for the people in Armenia, or now they are announcing new programs which people can apply to and move to Armenia, do research there. But there's also other funds. You can check our community of Gituj, like you mentioned FAST, but there's also ARPA, AESA, and there are like other funds are forming and people are doing, and also so I think they need to look into these funds and opportunities and move if they really see that their knowledge, their talent can be applied.
Well, there's orgs like Engineer Armenia now too, and AESA, right?
Yeah.
So we have some of those diaspora orgs that people could get involved in as well, and they're trying to connect to out there as well, which is cool.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, I think it's very important right now if there are people who can really help to define these state programs, to get involved, because we see there's a huge lack in Armenia of experience in like how should you define your science policy.
So think tanks. We need think tanks kind of thing.
Think tanks is one of the really missing things that we need.
I think so too.
And then the third one, if people have resources like money they want to invest, I see a lot of people doing that. They go and do a lot of things, but one of the things that is really missing, and this I would say there's a big disbalance here, we don't see people investing in human capital on the scientific level, like fellowships, right? People can go and create their own fellowships with their names or people they really like. And look at the US universities, right? Everywhere you have these like named scholarships, fellowships, professorships. Like we don't see this in Armenia.
Yeah.
Even in diaspora, I don't see it often. There are some, but I don't see it often. Like it seems like we just don't do this.
I see more social sciences. Yes, I see like more history and archaeology and like those
probably
things.
Probably more in Armenian studies.
Yeah, more Armenian studies stuff, but not as much as science.
Which is makes sense. That's understandable why in the diaspora you want to keep like Armenian heritage and but right now we in Armenia we really need to create those scholarships, grants, fellowships, professorships. If people have more resources, let's go create them universities. I don't understand why there is no
I want to build
private university by some really big philanthropist in Armenia.
Or donate a college. Add a college to like whatever, add a whole new building and make it dedicated to science and bring in the best professors from around the world. And
I think the issue I'm seeing here with the diaspora is the fact that they don't fully trust the government.
They don't need to work with government.
Yeah, they can go around it. Maybe
they can go check the funds which they trust,
Maybe
if there
not
is
only
no
the
one,
government, but also
they can create their own. Or there are some projects you can see, like some people are fundraising. There's a project called Armenia. You can go on their website. There are sometimes scientific projects. You can go and donate there. Or you can just look in the fundraisings of different organizations. There's also one I forgot to mention. You can check our community of organizations in Gitur. There are some that specifically fund science.
Yeah,
you can choose whichever one you like. Or in the end, like, look, if you don't have you don't find any organization you like, you don't find any project you like approach us. We'll try to help.
Yeah.
We are not going to we are not funding science ourselves, but we'll at least connect with people or help the people to create their own, let's say, scholarships or fellowships. We have that experience, by the way. There's one of the founders of CRISP and his wife. They created the fellowships with their names
In Armenia?
Yeah.
CRISP, the gene editing in
No,
China?
CRISP, the noise cancellation.
Oh, right, CRISP,
Yeah.
which actually someone was talking about for us using for this podcast, actually.
Oh,
You should.
Yeah, we should.
So David and his spouse, they created 2 fellowships
that's
for space,
wonderful.
by the way,
Wow.
research and engineering.
Yeah, someone was saying.
That's amazing.
Well, I actually wanted to ask you, just because you have a background in space exploration, I mean, I'd love to just sit here and talk an hour about just that experience of, I think it was Venus that you worked on, or with the Russian physics. But in your from your ears and working in that, and just talking to people maybe that are in the field, does Armenia have a potential for some sort of space programs or getting to that industry? Maybe not rocket launches, but I know I mentioned satellites earlier, but I really want a satellite.
Definitely, there's a potential, and I think it's not only about potential, but this is also about the need. We need to, whatever frontiers the humanity has, and space is one of them. For me, I think I define that there are 3 frontiers for humanity, and space is one of them. Definitely, if you want to be competitive in the world, if you want to be seen as needed, as a entity that should exist, if you want the other countries to value you, that you are not just something on a map, right? You are bringing value. You need to get into these frontier fields and solve problems and give value, which for you and also for others to see that you are solving some important problems.
No, that actually goes perfectly into this idea of maybe improving Armenia's sovereignty. Our whole issue right now in terms of our security is that we don't have enough value for the rest of the world for them to even be interested in understanding our supporting us and what we want and what we need. And entering new fields and being a frontier and having we'd have some sort of leverage in space or whatever that other people would need, and then they'd be more willing to accommodate our needs as well. So that's actually really interesting. I mean, if there was some sort of a program out there, if I went and started a space academy, no space academy, but would you be interested in the future to kind of be involved in something like that in the frontier of space science in Hayastan?
Yeah, sure. Cool. I'm
unlimited money.
I'm really helping right now, more like on a voluntary basis, like with some activities on advancing the whatever research is happening. Yeah. Just to create the capabilities for competitive, internationally competitive research, and it's really the main field which is inspiring for me, space.
Because I have you here, I did want to quickly ask, because there was that news of that satellite that went up. Actually, I think we would all be interested in to hear if you have an opinion on this, but what value does that have? If you could explain what we have right now in terms of that contract we did with the Spanish company, that satellite, what sort of benefit is that giving us right now?
So first of all, I mean, it's fine if you buy the satellite from someone else. Yeah. As a first thing. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out some nuances, but as also our government and the company already announced that it's called Armsat.
So we own it, or we're renting it? We own it.
There is no full clarity on that yet. I hope we own it.
Yeah,
and I think eventually, at least, it will be passed fully to Armenian entity.
Mm-hmm.
So in space, there is this thing called every country has a list of space objects. Basically, every space object has a flag on it, like ships, right?
Or it's like HTML, the website, right? .eus or whatever.
No. This is in
.am.
When countries are joining space treaty, outer space treaty, right? They are mandated to do some things, and one of the things is like you need to have a list of register of space objects that are registered in your country, basically, which have your country's flag on it, right? So the question is this going to be with Armenian flag or not? So let's wait and see. I hope so. So the other benefit is definitely they are creating a ground station in Armenia and
they are
creating the ability to get the data, process it. That's definitely important and going to create the human capital and
the foundation
capabilities.
For that. Yeah, I feel like we need the experience. We don't have the experience that really to know what to do with maybe a satellite. Even on, would you agree with that, or do we have the people that know what to do with?
Yeah, the company Geocosmos, which is the state company, which is which collaborated with the Spanish company Atlantis with this project. They have that capability. They were already getting some data from satellites and processing.
Nice. So they'd already been kind of gaining some sort of experience over the last few years. Nice. So earlier, Tigran, you were saying that in the last year or so that media has been more keen to highlight all the new technological advances or the new investments. I mean, do you think that's a consequence of the war or like a result of the war? You know, us knowing that technology is so much more necessary now for our own security.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's part of the reason.
Yeah.
Finally, it got to many people that if you want really to be competitive, and if you really want peace, as we are talking all the time today, you can't just like talk about peace. Yeah, I want a peace, and then people will want peace, right? That's not the way it works.
Yeah.
If you want a peace, it means you need to make it costly for others
to not want
peace.
Why did they build all those nuclear weapons on both sides and no one ended up using them because the other side had a bunch of nuclear weapons and yet there's your peace. It sucks, but
that's the only sure way to have a peace. Otherwise, you are going to beg for peace.
They're going to abuse you. No, they're going to bully you. You know, until you stand up to your bully, they're going to take advantage of you because they can get away with it. But
yeah, I don't think begging in our case will help
either. No, we have mean neighbors. They're not very nice. Pites. So there's this like a greater awareness as to the importance of tech. I mean, again, I know your specialty is in let's say weaponry and like those kind of things in defense, but in addition to small drones that we're developing pretty well right now, what else do you think we could what could benefit us in terms of security? Other areas of science.
I think it's really important these days because it's all about increasing the efficiency, speed, right, and reconnaissance capabilities. So I think it's important to develop the fields of autonomous systems, which in turn means that you need to have advancements in certain fields of math, computer science, robotics, which means hardware, electronics, communications.
I want a robot army. I want an army of robots.
And also, it's also very important to invest in cybersecurity research because it is part of the modern warfare and ability to defend yourself. So, this is just a quick one. Obviously, and I think it's also important to invest in biotech because you don't know what other people want to develop as a weapon, as a bioweapons,
Jesus Christ,
which is banned. But I mean, a lot of things are banned.
Anybody. That's not stopping.
So you need to at least have a knowledge and capability to assess the risks. Let's say, even just for assessing the risks, I think one of the important things that is lacking in Armenia, which comes to also my part of my profession, is this thing called systems engineering, which is about creating complex system of systems, and it's a whole like knowledge and set of tools of how you create such things. And one of the important things there is risk management. I don't think we do risk management very well, which sometimes just comes to the point when you need to write down the risks and assess them, like say what's the probability and the severity of this risk, and then you start
make
tackling
decisions,
which is the highest risk. I need to mitigate this risk. I need to find a way of how I'm doing that. Like, and this is not only in like tech or something, it's on every system, even on a state level. Like, you need to define your risks and mitigate them.
Yeah.
And there's a big lack, I think,
it's an entire industry in America.
In this, yeah. And one of the things I think also, like, if you come to research and development, right? Even how to manage the research and development process is really, like, people don't really know this in Armenia. Like, you can see that a lot of problems on why I was talking that the funding was not being spent, is that they treat R&D as like a binary result. It's either positive or negative, which is with R&D is not like that.
Yeah, even a failure is like progress in a sense, right? Where
and there are ways how to measure that. Like, if you look in I don't know, US, like Europe, or I don't know, I'm sure like Canada and Britain, like they have this thing called technology readiness level, and they rank every technology from 0 to 9 depending on how ready it is for production,
mass production,
and use.
Yeah.
So that already means they don't look at things as binary.
Right.
So you can say that, okay, I did the work, it's not a 9, but it progressed from 3 to 6. It means I have a great progress. And this is not being applied.
We don't have those measurement systems.
KPIs, or...
Yeah, interesting.
To conclude our wonderful and very interesting conversation, Tigran, what advice could you give to someone who wants to pursue a career in the tech industry, and also hopefully they want to give back to Armenia in some way in the future?
So definitely, if you want to pursue a career in the tech industry, I think it's very important to really learn the things which are going to form your basis. So I think maybe this is specific to Armenia. What I've seen right now, that people really start working from the second or third year. So in that case, I really want to advise them, don't
rush into it.
Yeah, don't rush into it. It's and I know it's tempting, and the family sometimes like pushes, like, hey, you are grown enough, like you need to start earning some money and help the family. That's really important, and I really appreciate that. I mean, it's very important to help, but just think about this like this: if you spend another, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years studying, whatever you are going, how you are going to help your family is going to be much more. Yeah, and you are going to help another 60 years on different level. So these several years is very important to really focus, study, get the knowledge, which is going to really help you to be on a completely different level. If you start working from the first year, you are missing the opportunity to form all these like bases, which is going to make you really successful in the future. You can't become really people. Not everyone is able to do well self-education. So I know there are exceptions, and there are people you don't even need probably professors for them, they will do it, but these are exceptions. So if you are not one of these people, and most probably you are not, then you need to really go find really good teachers. That's also important. I'm not saying just listen to anybody. Find a good teachers and really absorb all this information, knowledge, in math, in physics, in whatever fields you are interested. But obviously math is everywhere. Physics also, in some sense, I would say, is everywhere. So and choose the specific fields which you need to dig more like deeper into. This is very important. And then after that, we can talk about like how you can help, like really like give back to Armenia or the community. So, but and I would say also that in parallel to this, try to find a way how to be connected. If you are not in Armenia, or even if you are in Armenia, like be connected to know what's happening in the field, in the tech field, or what's happening, like what are the main issues, how you can help with the I don't know, government initiatives or public initiatives, private initiatives.
Maybe getting through some organizations that we have. Like, how should we expect students to get involved or meet?
Yeah, if we are talking about science specifically or research, I can recommend to look our Facebook page, or mostly we post a lot there. If there is about like tech, you can go and check. There are like tech associations in Armenia, which are, most of them are part of our community. You can check the organizations which are in our community on our website, and just follow their pages or newsletters.
Stay up to date.
Other thing is, if you really want to be like fit and be ready to, I don't know, defend any point, there are organizations that are training people to be ready. So I would recommend even looking into that.
Yeah. Well, you know, and if you're not going into tech and you want to help support this culture of science in Armenia, you know, everyone can kind of support in their own way, in their own fields. But I think if you want to support it, Gidush Initiative is a great place to go and look it up and see what they're up to and help support them. I'm a big fan, Tigran. So great work, and thank you for coming and talking with us. This was so much fun.
It was a pleasure.
Likewise.
You're listening to Haituk Talks, the official podcast of the AYF West. I'm Haig Minasyan.
And I'm Susanna Abrahamian.
And we're just a couple of Armenians
talking in the world.
A couple of Armenians talking in the world.